And we're back. I'm Jake, co-host Zach, and this is the QB Lab podcast. This podcast is dedicated to the greatest position in all sports. And today we've got a ton of stuff to cover. But before we jump into it, please like and hit that subscribe button. We know that 99% of you are not following us yet. So please hit that subscribe button because it's what's going to allow us to continue to make incredible episodes about the QB position. Let's get right into it. We got a ton of stuff to talk about. We got young guns, quarterbacks, the second-year pros. We got QB rooms where there's battles brewing for training camp. And we also got some other stuff, some other BS that we want to talk about that's going on in the world of entertainment. Zach, started off on the young guns. Let's nail it with Caleb Williams.
Okay, so Caleb Williams is a very interesting topic. I think he's got a lot of room to grow. And now with Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator, I think he's finally getting an opportunity. On this topic, Jake, I want to give you two quarterbacks, okay? I'm going to give you their stats. I'm not going to tell you who's who. Just tell me which one you'd prefer, okay? Quarterback one, 62.5% completion percentage, 208 yards per game, 1.2 touchdowns, and 0.4 interceptions per game, and an 87.8 QB rate. Then quarterback two, you got a 67% completion percentage, 263.5 yards per game, and a 1.3 touchdown for 0.86 interceptions per game, and a 90 quarterback rating. Which one are you going with?
I mean, you got to go with the second option. Better QB rating, more yards per game. To me, I look at QB rating as a great metric to determine the quality of a quarterback. So I'm going number two.
That's the right choice, just based on the metrics. Quarterback one is Caleb Williams' rookie season. Quarterback two is Jared Goff in his last season with the Rams before he got traded away for Stafford. You might be thinking, hey, Zach, why are you making that comparison? Well, that's Jared Goff's last season before he starts working with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson takes over in the second half of that season where he becomes play caller. And to me, it's a story about development. From a stats point of view, Ben Johnson is starting with someone with worse statistics. So he's got a long ways to go. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and say that Caleb Williams is the same type of talent as Jared Goff, because he's not. He's got different traits. He's got the ability to extend plays with his feet. He's got a bit more of an improvisational ability here. I think Caleb Johnson, from a raw talent point of view, has more to work with, but from a quarterback that can understand a system, can establish a presence at the NFL level, from an overall maturity, from the number of snaps being logged, I think Ben Johnson has a tougher hill to climb here. And when you look at the Chicago Bears last season, it was a really problematic offense. Like if you go back to the tape and you see how DJ Moore is playing, and if you're seeing Cole Kmet on the other side and Rome Odunze, they're not getting much separation. So defenses were stacking the box, blitzing them, because they know Caleb Williams didn't have options. So as much as Caleb Williams wanted to improvise and roll out and extend plays, it's not like he had people to really throw to. So in the offense, what they bring in Ben Johnson to try to help get something going in the offense. They bring in Colston Loveland as a first-round pick, who, if you're using your number 10 pick for a tight end, you better be sure that that's an elite level tight end. And I think they got their guy. Like, this is a guy who in tight spaces, I think, is going to make a lot of ridiculous plays. And they've got Burton in the second round. I think they're establishing enough pieces. I do think, though, that Ben Johnson has a long way to go with Caleb Williams, especially bringing in the Jared Goff perspective, exactly what he had to work with the last time he tried building an offense into a top 5 offense in the NFL.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, to me, the biggest concern I have with Caleb Williams is consistency, and maybe Ben Johnson is the answer to that. And I like that you brought up receiver separation, because although this show is all about quarterbacks and the quarterback position, it doesn't mean we can't ignore the other positions that can impact that quarterback play and that quarterback in that system. When we look at a guy like Caleb Williams, he needs the support. He's only in his second year. He didn't have a particularly good and consistent first year. So with that in mind, knowing that you're bringing in what I would call pretty much a genius in Ben Johnson, is hopefully he's going to be able to come up with schemes that's going to work for receivers to get them some more separation and make Caleb Williams' job easier. And then in turn, make Caleb Williams look like a legitimate NFL quarterback.
I want to bring in stats for a third quarterback. Okay.
Oh,
So you've
wow,
got
a third guy. Okay, it's going to get really tricky here.
No, now we're getting spicy here, and I think it's going to lead to a question of what Chicago should do with their offense. So this is the comp I'm going to give you, okay? This quarterback had a 69.3% completion percentage, 272 yards per game, 1.7 touchdowns per game for 0.8 interceptions, and a 101.1 quarterback rating. So all of those metrics are better than the Jared Goff last year for the LA Rams. I'm not going to give you the hints because, I don't think you're going to get it just based on the numbers, but that quarterback, those stats I just gave you, that's 2023 Tua Tagovailoa. And I think that's the ceiling of where Ben Johnson probably needs to take Caleb Williams. Why do I use that as a comp? Well, I do think they both come from an RPO heavy college offense, and they're in the same type of tier for arm talent. Now, the key here is Tua's stats were inflated that season because that was Tyreek Hill's last great season. And Tyreek Hill was an absolute monster for creating separation. And the way Mike McDaniels used him was lots of motion before the snap. So what does this tell you? I think for Ben Johnson to get the most out of Caleb Williams, they got to get creative with a lot of motion, which is not exactly how the Detroit Lions played last season, or with increasing the ability for Caleb to rely on the improvisation overall. I think there's a real separation challenge here, but Ben Johnson is probably the best guy to do it. What he was able to do with this Detroit Lions offense and stack the offense with talent to be able to make things happen and play to his quarterback strengths is something that he clearly chose this job for a reason. He's clearly understood the film with Caleb Williams and where he wants to take it. But I do think this, when you've got such raw talent here with so many options of where to take this offense, it's going to let Ben Johnson maximize his creativity and find ways to really get Caleb Williams to get to the next level. But I think this is probably not a quick fix. This is probably a 2.5, 3 season journey, similar to how we got Jared Goff's numbers to come from that level to what we saw last season. And I think they're going to have to create a new style of offense with all of these new weapons that have come along the way to really let Caleb Williams play to his strengths and get him to that next level.
Yeah, it's a multi-year journey. I don't think that the Chicago Bears fans should be thinking that this is an instant success. Things are going to turn around instantly. As we know with most franchises, things do not turn around as quickly as you would like and as you hope. I think in a lot of scenarios, it takes multiple years. It's not just about turning the quarterback position. It's not just about improving the offense. It's not just about improving the defense. It's also about improving the franchise as a whole, how the players view themselves, how they view the team, the likelihood of them winning. You have to believe you're going to win. It's easy for a coach to come in and say, well, look, I did this here and I did this there, so I'm going to come in, I'm going to turn you into Detroit today. It's just not how things work. These things take time, and there's really got to be a strong belief structure in it. And I don't want to get too far away from the quarterback position here, but it really is an important piece that anyone listening to this show really needs to understand that, yes, we're talking about the quarterback position. And yes, it's crucial to the success of these organizations, but a lot of things have to go right for those things to remain and for you to become a legitimate winning organization for multiple years. I mean, let's just take a quick look at the Buffalo Bills. Perfect example. An organization that was arguably the worst organization in the NFL for almost 2 decades. They changed up management, both the general manager, the head coach. They, of course, land their superstar quarterback in Josh Allen. But let's not forget that most analysts thought that it was a terrible pick. Most analysts did not think that Josh Allen was going to become a good player, let alone a superstar and an MVP now. But with all that in mind, it's not just Josh Allen. It's the coaches that were brought in. It's the GM. It's the belief structure that every player that was joining the organization was believing that they could be a winning organization. And now look, you have the Buffalo Bills, who are a legitimate Super Bowl contender every single year now. And they've been doing this for quite a few years, and it likely will go on for longer. So when you add it all up, they turned around an organization 2 to 3 years and turned it into a perennial, probably decade-long Super Bowl contender. So I want to move on to another team that was a Super Bowl contender for 2 decades because they had the greatest quarterback to ever play this game in Tom Brady, and they got their guy now. They got Drake Maye, who I believe is their guy. Now, do I think New England is poised to win the division? Do I think they're going to be the best team in the AFC East? No, I don't think that's the case. But I do think they're becoming a legitimate playoff contender, and that's mainly because they have Drake Maye, who showed signs of brilliance last year. Zach, any takes on Drake Maye?
Yeah, I think Drake Maye did show those signs of brilliance. I think the easy things to recall are those deep sideline throws, which are just incredible levels of arm talent that's required to make that happen. However, I do think the Patriots offense last year probably put Drake Maye in a little bit of a position to fail. I think that offensive line really let him down, and he wasn't running as much as he was in college. So he wasn't as comfortable just being himself. I think right now they have to evaluate how best use Drake Maye's talent. Personally, I think the arm talent is there, but I want to see him running a bit more. Like, I think Drake Maye's ceiling right now, as we go into the ceiling, is like a Justin Herbert level of arm talent with like an early Josh Allen level of running. Everyone compares all quarterbacks running on a scale of like 1 to Josh Allen, which almost makes the Josh Allen comparison a little bit cringe right now. But what I'm really trying to say is Drake Maye does have that big build where those early seasons of Josh Allen before he was super refined, I would like to see him try to emulate that. I want to see 5 designed runs a game. Is that too much to ask, Jake?
No, I think that's reasonable. I was actually just taking a quick look on my phone of what Drake Maye's 40-yard dash was, because that gives me a very good idea of what kind of speed and acceleration we're talking about. And you nailed it. Drake Maye can run. For anyone who doesn't know this, he's actually faster, or was faster in the 40-yard dash than Josh Allen. He ran a
Now there's different
4.65.
Yeah, and there's different types of running. What makes Josh Allen special is how he can punch it into the end zone from 20 yards out. That's a power running quarterback. Big Maye isn't going to be punching things in from 20 yards out at this stage, but it's a different type of speed than like a Kyler Murray or like a Lamar Jackson. I think Drake Maye can find himself managing contact pretty well and getting himself to extend plays with his legs way more than what we saw last season. And I think that's very different than like they just installed, like obviously Vrabel's the new head coach, but they installed Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator here. And I think the big risk when you do that is they might try to make Drake Maye into Brady, and he's not Tom Brady. It's a different offensive skill set. And if what you try to do is install this like quick read, option heavy offense that really catered to the fact that Tom Brady was getting that ball out in less than 2.5 seconds, that potentially risks destroying Drake Maye's confidence if he doesn't immediately succeed. I think they need to let Drake Maye be who he actually is, try to extend plays with his legs, not try to do too much, like not try to mentally overload him with all these things he's got to do before the snap, and just use those legs, use that bona fide powerful arm talent. They just got Travion Henderson at running back as well, so they can do some power running to try to really make linebackers and try to get people to shift in, which very much complements the ability to eventually throw a go ball or throw a deep ball that matches his arm talent. But I think Vrabel's pragmatism has to come to the forefront here. He's got to get McDaniels to bend on his typical offense if we're going to get Drake Maye to get the most out of this next year.
System. You gotta build a system for the quarterback. You can't force them into a mold. And this is why so often, and we've talked about this before off air, which is great quarterbacks tend to have consistency with their offensive coordinators. Constant change of offensive coordinators is not typically a good thing, particularly when you're talking about developing a young quarterback, because they need consistency and they need an offensive coordinator that's building a system based on their skill set, not the other way around. You don't want an offensive coordinator using their system and trying to plug any quarterback in. You're trying to draft the quarterback that makes sense to that system. Now, the Patriots, it's a bit different, right? They got a new head coach now. Things could be a little different, but I certainly see the potential. I think when we talk about the athleticism, that's something that New England has not had in a long time, and I think they can take advantage of it. It's certainly not consistent with what they've done in the past, but that doesn't mean they can't adjust. And they drafted Maye. So at the end of the day, they should want to try to fit a system that works his magic. And just to talk a little bit more about the Drake Maye, Josh Allen comparison, because some people may say we're absolutely insane for even talking about those two guys in the same conversation. But at the end of the day, we're actually probably going to have to talk a lot more about them because they're going to be in the same division, or they already are. They already play each other twice a season. And if New England continues to improve, I think there's going to be a lot more conversations about these two. They're both big guys, strong arms. They can both run. Yes, Josh Allen has a bit of that uniqueness in terms of the size and the speed and how we can sort of bowl guys over. But Drake Maye should not be forgotten as a running threat. And I think for anyone for fantasy football, they need to keep him on that list for that reason. I think there's a lot bigger or a lot higher of a ceiling for Maye than people truly realize. I do want to discuss just one more, the next big name on the board here, because this is a guy who was not the first quarterback taken, but he has been incredible. His rookie season was off the charts. I just am a little concerned that he could be another RG3, Robert Griffin III. Jayden Daniels. What's the deal with him, Zach? Is he the real deal?
Jayden Daniels is the real deal. The RG3 injury risk is very interesting, and now I'm actually afraid because they're also both in the Washington organization. That's a really interesting comparison there. I really hope Jayden Daniels stays healthy because he's an absolute revelation to watch play the quarterback position. What we saw last season was the best rookie quarterback season we've ever seen. So if you're watching these videos, you're trying to see, hey, how do we try to provide a trajectory on some of these rookie quarterbacks? This is the most amped anybody should be for any quarterback ever. This guy had the highest completion percentage of any rookie quarterback ever at 69%. And what's exciting about that is it's not like this was a Bo Nix situation where the coach was drawing up check downs and easy plays that are just designed for a skill set. This guy was also elite beyond 20 yards. So this guy's got the best completion percentage ever, and he's ripping the ball all over the field. And beyond that, he also had the best rushing season from a rookie quarterback. This guy can do it all. And I think there's a secret weapon here, Jake. Have you been looking at the Cognalyze technology he's using?
Not at all. I don't even know what that is. So I'm excited to hear about this.
Okay. So as part of the stipulations of Jayden Daniels' draft, he required the Washington Commanders organization to let him use the Cognalyze technology. So what this is he gets up at 6 a.m. every day. He puts on a VR headset and he's training through tape at 1.75 times playback speed. So when he's in the game, it slows down. And that actually is reflected in the numbers. He's doing a combination of things we haven't seen from a quarterback before. So what he's doing is he's figuring out what the minimum variables he needs to make a good decision. And what's interesting about that is he's scrambling more than any quarterback we've ever seen. So last season, he had 87 scrambles. For comparison, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen both had 47 scrambles. So he's scrambling almost twice as often as your top two MVP candidates. So this is creating a new meta where people are making quicker decisions. They have to scramble more, and that's opening things up in a way where he's passing for a completion percentage that's higher than any rookie quarterback ever. I think this is going to lead to more adoption of this Cognalyze technology, and I think it's going to lead to people making amplified decisions and thinking through how to scramble and how to deal with defenses in a more creative way.
That is absolutely insane. I didn't know he did that. Hearing this is crazy to me. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think it shows the level of genius he is, right? And how prepared he was for this job and how he could take it to the next level. The only thing I wanted to note there was the scrambles. That's interesting to me because I think that speaks both to the quarterback's ability, but it also might speak to the lack of the offensive line. And, looking at a situation like that, if you could solidify the line a little bit more, he would probably be that much better, right? This guy has then likely not hit his ceiling. Jayden Daniels probably has a long way to go from there then, no?
Well, probably. But I think what's really interesting here is if you're practicing at 1.75x speed and you're breaking down coverages, blitzes like this, that's slow. Like, even if your offensive line massively underperforms, you've practiced for that situation. Now you're adding Deebo Samuels to the offense. Like, Washington got better. And now he has more options that he can play with as his check downs, as his, if things go wrong, what do I do? Like, there's a reason that this guy had an unprecedented rookie season because he's practicing for these situations in an unprecedented way. If he already is creating this much of a gap between him and what people are projecting he was supposed to do, and he's so cool under pressure, like, which it definitely goes into the training as well. Like, it very much aligns with the personality you saw all throughout the playoff run. I'm just super excited for what happens, but you scared me off the top there, Jake, with that RG3 comparison, because I really hope he just stays healthy. That's obviously a risk for someone that's scrambling at an unprecedented rate. But if he stays healthy, I think he's an absolute game changer, and I'm super excited for what he produces.
And I think what the RG piece also brings up is, yes, every quarterback has a risk of injury. It's how does that organization handle that injury? You and I believe that the quarterback position is the most important position in professional sports. With that in mind, they need to be taken care of and protected like that trophy they are. So if a guy is hurt, AKA when RG3 went down, instead of rushing him back and potentially, and looking back now, they ruined his career. We don't want to see that same thing happen with another quarterback. If a quarterback goes down, they should not be rushed back onto the field because it could end their career. It's simply not worth it, especially now when these quarterbacks are getting the type of salary that they're getting. They're not getting short-term deals. They're getting long-term, big money, massive guarantees. So with that, you need to understand that these quarterbacks, if they're hurt for a little bit or if they miss one season, it's okay because they're probably signed for another 7 or 8 years. So we don't need to be rushing them through and potentially destroying them. So, hopefully nothing like that happens to Jayden Daniels. But if he does get hurt, I hope to see that the Washington Commanders are a lot more careful with how they handle Jayden Daniels versus how they handled Robert Griffin III.
What was interesting then is their backup plan for RG3 was they drafted Kirk Cousins in that same draft. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who the backup is for Jayden Daniels, but Jayden Daniels, he's such a superstar. You can't be planning for that in that way. If Jayden Daniels stays healthy, he will win a Super Bowl at some point in his career. You can hold me to that. He looks phenomenal.
So I'm just taking a quick look at the depth chart just to see who we got there. And it's funny enough, it's Marcus Mariota. That is their backup. And then they got Josh Johnson. So they don't have a lot there behind him if he should get injured or go down. There's certainly not a lot of depth in that QB room.
Yeah, we've already seen what Mariota can do. Kirk Cousins, when he was the backup, he had the ability to grow and create a name for himself. Mariota's already topped out. It's a different situation entirely.
So I got a few more quarterbacks, we'll call these the young guns, to cover. A couple of them coming at you that really don't have a lot of experience in the NFL, and then a couple more that have some more experience. I want to sort of knock off here. We got one, Michael Penix Jr. Very interesting one here, coming into an interesting situation. I would argue a very good situation. I think he's coming into a good organization, good receivers, obviously an incredible running back in Bijan Robinson. So Michael Penix Jr. has a great opportunity to be a legitimate NFL quarterback in his, we'll call it, semi-rookie season. I know he played a little bit last year when Cousins was benched, but This is his opportunity to really step up to the plate. I think personally he could be a decent quarterback this year. I think that the Falcons have a legitimate shot at the division just when we look at who's in that division, right?
Yeah. My take here is that Michael Penix Jr. is the Ricky Bobby of the NFL. I think he's in, like, if you look at every single one of his throws, it's one of those, if you're not first, you're last. He's got a crazy amount of arm talent, and this ball just sails. Like this, every ball, like his average depth of target is just under 11 yards, which is absolutely insane. So on any given play, it's either a shake and bake to Drake London in the end zone for a touchdown, or you've got the entire Atlanta fan base praying to baby Jesus that it's not an easy interception. In the 3 starts that he had at the end of last season, it's 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You're looking at a 50-50 rate of a big play situation, but it's a 9% ratio in terms of big time throws. So I think for Penix to be successful, he has to figure out how to use his absolute cannon of an arm successfully. But what I'm seeing in terms of reports is he's been working with Matt Ryan, who's been acting as a bit of a mentor, which I think is going to help with his overall maturity. But where he really needs to grow in this coming season is between the 0 to 9 yards. Because if your average depth of target is 11 yards, it just historically doesn't lead to a huge success rate. But regardless, with an arm this huge, this quarterback is going to put butts in seats. It's going to be awesome to watch him week in and week out. And it's going to be absolutely nuts if he can really master between the 0 to 9 yard line. Because if you got Bijan Robinson, an absolute weapon in your backfield, and you set him up in some of these check down situations, you can turn a broken play into a touchdown very easily. And this Atlanta Falcons offense, if they can manage Penix's arm properly, could be a really strong franchise for years to come.
And I think the risk is pretty low for Penix. I think that's another thing that we need to understand. At the end of the day, yes, he was a high pick, but they do have Kirk Cousins also if they should not move on from him. I also don't think the expectations, at least I don't seem to feel that way, where there's a ton of hype around him and that there's a lot of pressure. I think that the Falcons are giving him time to develop, and I think that's the right way to do it. We see a lot of teams, they just throw that guy right in, and it often does not lead to success. It often leads to failure.
If you're this Atlanta Falcons organization, though, I think you have to move on from Kirk Cousins. It's too big of a contract. Like from a gameplay point of view, coming into the current season, they're in playoff contention. So it might not be like something that happens immediately, although there are rumors of him potentially finding his way in Cleveland, which we can discuss later. But if you've got that big of a contract in your backup quarterback, it's just going to inherently make it more difficult to compete at other positions. And I think what you said there is spot on. Like Penix doesn't have that, like even Shador Sanders level of hype, which based on the small sample, he kind of deserves. Like if you look at the PFF data, they actually have him just below Jayden Daniels and just above Baker Mayfield. So this is a guy, small sample size. So don't take that one to the bank at all. But based on the data we have so far, this is someone that people should be really optimistic about. Like this arm is very special, and it's already producing data that backs up how special it is. This is going to be one that you're going to want to tune in for over the course of the season to see how it pans out.
And with Bryce Young, another guy who I think the expectations were a lot higher for him, kind of thrown into the fire, hasn't exactly worked out. I think the bigger problem than anything is the organization and the roster around him. Right? I feel like that's his biggest challenge, and I know that they're trying to fix that. They've apparently improved the offensive line significantly, but I'm pretty down on Bryce Young. I really don't have high expectations for him or the Carolina Panthers. I really don't think there's going to be anything particularly exciting coming out of there. I mean, there was some flashes from him last season. I don't have his stats in front of me, but I know he had some moments where he looked like he could work out in the NFL, but I feel like for the most part, he's almost nearing bust territory.
Jake, I got 2 more quarterbacks for you, okay? Quarterback 1 65.3% completion percentage, 268.8 yards per game, 0.3 touchdowns to 0.5 interceptions per game. Quarterback 2, 60.8% completion percentage, 195 yards per game, 1.25 touchdowns to 0.75 interceptions per game. Who are you taking? Quarterback 1. So quarterback 1 is Joe Burrow in his rookie season. Quarterback 2 is Bryce Young of the games he started last season. And you might be like, hey, Zach, why are you making that kind of a comparison? Well, the reason is because they're both former number 1 picks. And Joe Burrow's season, his rookie season, was the only season he's had where he didn't have Jamar Chase. And here's the thing. People are trying to say, hey, Bryce Young is suddenly going to become a lot better because the second half of last season was way better. He had 6 clutch game drives that helped him have a better tail end of the season. And now he's got the best rookie wide receiver from a talent point of view, according to PFF, of the whole class. So there can be, I've seen all, and I'm kind of a little bit on this camp that Joe Burrow is definitely elevated because of how high quality the talent is around him. And that for Bryce Young, you just got to give him a couple solid wide receivers for him to have a chance. That rookie season where Joe Burrow was there, he had like a rookie T. Higgins, so he had a little bit by way of options. But Bryce Young was supposed to have like a solid number of options last year. You had a Deontay Johnson that people were up about. You had a veteran in Adam Thielen that people were super excited about as well. And then you had some rookie and younger talent in Mingo and in Xavier Legette that people were really high on. Bryce Young has had the opportunities to try to be successful, and I think Carolina is making a solid move to try to put some pieces around him before they decide if they're going to move on. But ultimately, I don't think Bryce Young's got the Joe Burrow talent, and I do think the Carolina Panthers, as an organization, are cursed. For whatever reason, they just year in, year out, make collectively terrible decisions that puts their football team in not the best position to succeed. The only thing they got going for them is they're in the worst division in the NFL. So if for some reason they figure it out, they can actually find themselves en route to a playoff spot way easier than if they were in a different division. But that organization, that management sucks. They're cursed. They're trying to put talent around a guy who doesn't have the stats to back it up. And I don't think they're in a position to succeed.
They sound a lot like the Buffalo Bills were, and they sound a lot like the Cleveland Browns. I do want to just bring up one thing before we move to the next guy, because you brought something up interesting that I know you and I are on the same page about. Jamar Chase elevated, and I think that's an understatement, elevates Joe Burrow's play. I don't think Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback in the NFL. I think he has an elite team around him. I think he's a good quarterback. I do not think he's great. So for anyone listening, if you think Joe Burrow's great, I think you're nuts. I don't think he's great. I think he's a good quarterback with an amazing roster around him that makes him look better than he actually is.
So you got to give Joe Burrow some credit because he does make the right read before the ball is
he's a jerk. I don't like him.
Okay, that's a take. The thing is, though, I think the overall intent behind a lot of your point there is spot on, because if Jamar Chase is always open, like, his contested catch percentage is less than 50%. So his catches are happening in a way where he's got separation, but you do have to give Joe Burrow some credit in that he's making the right read before the snap. He knows how to get the ball to Jamar Chase. They obviously have that long-standing connection that helps. You also have to give the supporting staff in Cincinnati, like T. Higgins is super underrated, I think, in his role, and I'm happy for him that he got that paycheck. But I do think Joe Burrow is understood to be this franchise-altering quarterback. But I would make the argument that if you drop Joe Burrow in a system where the quality of talent is lower, people would view his skill set wildly differently. So I think we're in agreement in terms of how well he's rated versus actual playmaking ability. Although you got to give the necessary, because Joe Burrow could just easily miss those throws. Joe Burrow could be, Bryce Young or one of these other guys where you're like, what is going on any given play? So he's got a cool head about him. He makes good reads before the snap, but definitely elevated by the talent he's got around him.
Totally. So we got another guy here, JJ McCarthy, who's, I think, coming into a phenomenal system. I think he's coming in, we're talking about it right now. that if you move Burrow to a different system, he may look different. We might not see him the same way. I think JJ McCarthy is a perfect example of a guy who could not be coming into a better situation. He's got a fantastic team around him, incredible coaching staff, a good organization, an organization that has been good for a very long time. I think he's got a great opportunity here to become a stud quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's got everything going for him. Like he could have a dream NFL start. He's got obviously one of the best wide receiving cores in the NFL. They just went ahead and bolstered that offensive line. But I don't see Kevin O'Connell getting enough flowers in terms of how he makes quarterbacks better. Like let's
He
take
did
a look
with Sam Darnold. Sam frickin' Darnold.
Yeah, not just Sam Darnold, but Kirk Cousins. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that Kirk Cousins comes off a phenomenal season, gets a massive contract in Atlanta, and takes a step back. Like, I think Kevin O'Connell does a phenomenal job understanding his quarterbacks, understanding their strengths, and making sure that it's a system that works. Sam Darnold was a quarterback that people thought was on the brink of his career just being over, and now he's $100 million man. Like, this is a guy that's gone ahead, really worked with their quarterbacks, built up their confidence. But also, it's got to be easier to be a quarterback when your wide receiver one is Justin Jefferson. I could probably make a couple completions to Justin Jefferson, and I can barely throw a football. All I have to do is get it within like a 10-yard radius of this guy, and this guy will do everything that's required just to get that catch he had against the Buffalo Bills. No other wide receiver ever is making that catch. Jerry Rice is pretty damn good. But the idea
OBJ
here
at the top of his career, maybe.
OBJ, that's a story. That's a crazy route to go down. Justin Jefferson, that catch itself had to go more vertical. I don't know if OBJ actually has the physical traits to have pulled off that specific catch, but overall, Justin Jefferson is a bona fide wide receiver one. He's an offense all to himself, which takes some of the pressure off of JJ McCarthy. And also this Vikings team, the way they've made these investments I don't think they're going to be relying on JJ McCarthy to the same extent that they relied on Sam Darnold. They basically immediately re-sign Aaron Jones, which tells me that they probably want to run the ball even a bit more than they did last season. And I think you're going to find that they don't necessarily ask JJ McCarthy to do as much as they ask Sam Darnold to do right away. Now, do I think JJ McCarthy is going to immediately be like a Pro Bowler or immediately be an All-Star? Time will tell. I think he potentially had the traits out of university to be very good. But I also think that like if Kevin O'Connell is that good at making Kirk Cousins better, making Sam Darnold better, he's likely done his own evaluation of JJ McCarthy and had to see something to be willing to let Sam Darnold walk. He knows how important that quarterback position is, how integral it is to be able to run an offense. And do we think JJ McCarthy year one immediately potentially fills the role of Sam Darnold? Possibly, but I also think that it's probably going to be more like a couple of years where they figure out exactly what they got in JJ McCarthy, and they've got enough talent around him that it can mold to his strengths. They'll figure out exactly what those strengths are and game plan accordingly going forward.
So this is where we're going to diverge in opinions. I think JJ McCarthy is going to be a stud out the gate. I think the Vikings are going to be great this year. I think that they're going to be dominant. And from what I've seen, just tapes, watching, what I've heard from players with the Vikings is big time stuff. Now, again, every teammate's going to say good things about their quarterback, but I have to say that defensive tackle Harrison Phillips, who's a former Buffalo Bills defensive tackle, is now on the Vikings, and he said he was giving high praise, high pressure, saying that McCarthy looks a lot like Allen. He reminds him of him, his preparation, his strength, his personality with the players, with his teammates, and also just for the plain reason, you already brought this up, with Justin Jefferson, who is undoubtedly the best receiver in the NFL. If you have a guy like that, just chuck up the ball. Let him go do his thing. Let him be a dog and eat. And I think that McCarthy, knowing that he's got that in his back pocket, knowing that he's got O'Connell helping him call the plays, there's going to be a confidence in him. And again, I think it's going to be right off the bat. it's either going to work in the first couple of games or it's not. Like McCarthy's either going to take off in game 1, game 2 and gain a ton of confidence and the Vikings are just going to steamroll, or it's going to be a total blunder and it might end up being like what you're saying, which is a couple years. But personally, I lean towards big success for JJ McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings.
Here's what I worry about with JJ McCarthy. Their defense is legit in Minnesota. That's probably the toughest division in the NFL. So if you're immediately going to be under this media pressure of people seeing you in your first real season and expecting, if not demanding, a playoff spot, while you're in a division with the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers, and now a Ben Johnson improved Chicago Bears team that I think could be quite dangerous. I do think that what they're going to demand of him could be a little bit too much and could force him into doing things that he's not as comfortable to do. He's in a situation where he immediately has to win, which can be quite challenging for a new young quarterback. Can he do it? Maybe. But I think if he does it, it's going to be in a way where he's going to get very battle tested very quickly. And it's going to be an interesting storyline to watch as the season progresses.
We got one last second-year quarterback to discuss, and he's got a hell of a name. Gotta love this name, man. Bo Nix. I mean, that alone should make you a stud. You know, oh, who's your quarterback? Bo Nix. I mean, come on. That's a pretty cool name. But honestly, he looked fantastic last year. I think a lot of people were surprised at how good he was, given the situation he was coming into, given, you know, coaching changes and everything else, although he had some great coaches behind him. But I think that that's probably was a big question mark is, can he do it with this team, with this organization, right?
I think the strength of his rookie season has to be chalked up to how good Sean Payton is as a coach. He didn't demand Bo Nix do that much, but he also very much understood what Bo Nix was and played to his strengths. You saw a rookie quarterback that was willing to scramble, willing to get into the thick of it. He also threw a couple cool goal balls to Cortland Sutton. That was a connection that I don't think people expected to be that successful when the season started. But Bo Nix led the season in checkdowns per game. He's really done well trying to maximize the value between the 0 and 10-yard line. And now in this offseason, you're adding Evan Ingram, which gives you a bona fide threat over the middle who can jump up and grab some of those balls. I think what Sean Payton is trying to do is layer in a little bit more of a longer average depth of target. Now that he's got Bo Nix at this level of comfort, I think it makes sense in the next stage of his development that he tries to work more over the middle and tries to get a bit more downfield. The other thing, too, is last year's run game was miserable. They add RJ Harvey, which is like the classic Sean Payton. Like they draft a guy that clearly Sean Payton was just like, I like that guy. I don't care about what any other running back is on the board. Just grab him and I'm going to make him work in my system. Similar to how they brought Bo Nix in, right? Like he also was super high on Bo Nix. But I think this is going to be a situation with a much improved running game with Evan Ingram helping over the middle. I think Bo Nix is pretty well set up for the next stage of his development. But I think in terms of this situation, you got to give Bo Nix a lot of credit. But I think we're cementing Sean Payton as being maybe the best quarterback coach of all time. Like in terms of like, if you look at the numbers, he starts with Drew Brees that everybody had pretty much given up on and leads him to one of the best quarterback careers of all time. The only real stain on this is Russell Wilson, which I think you got to really pass more of that blame to Russell Wilson, who was acting like an absolute like prima donna in terms of not being willing to talk to his teammates, in terms of thinking like it's my way or the highway, which some of that is kind of deserved when you've won a Super Bowl and you've had the level of success he had. But Sean Payton just wasn't able to get through to him. And what he's done with Drew Brees is obviously otherworldly. And with how he set Bo Nix up for his rookie season, how they're already putting the pieces towards a sophomore season, I'm super high on Sean Payton. I'm super high on Bo Nix. And the only real thing that's plaguing them is they share a division with the Chiefs. So he's always going to have his first round playoff matchup being a tough matchup like he had this past year against the Buffalo Bills. And it's going to be difficult from a organization success standpoint, from a playoff success standpoint, to see that level of growth. But it doesn't mean that level of growth isn't happening season to season, that this isn't an investment to see what Bo Nix might look like 1 or 2 seasons down the line.
Love that take on Sean Payton. He is one of the greatest quarterback minds that we have ever seen, that we may ever see. And I agree that the Russell Wilson taint, I take that with a grain of salt because I think there was just a relationship issue there. The fact that he's done this with Drew Brees and now with Bo Nix, to me, is enough already to cement him into that category. He is unbelievable. Honestly, before the Bo Nix season, before last season, I was kind of saying Sean Payton's not legitimate, blah, 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 blah. But now that he's done it again with another quarterback, I think we can sort of solidify that at this point. And I think the other piece I wanted to bring up here that you mentioned when you're talking about Bo Nix is comfort level. I think that that's something that is so important to quarterbacks that we don't always talk about. Doesn't appear exactly on stats, but when a quarterback is more confident and more comfortable in the organization and the system they're in, they tend to produce better numbers. I mean, that's why generally quarterbacks get better as their career goes on, not worse. Now, we've had situations where quarterbacks have a great rookie season, they fall off. I mean, we could talk a little bit about CJ Stroud's had a bit of a step down. Carson Wentz obviously ended up over the course of his career getting a hell of a lot worse. But overall, generally speaking, quarterbacks get better as they understand the system as they get more comfortable and confident in that system. Now, there are a few QB rooms that we need to talk about because we got NFL training camp coming up, and there are 4 QB rooms that are, what I would say, quite competitive. You have serious rooms that have serious opportunities. We got the Browns, the Colts, the Saints, the Giants. Zach, make your pick. Who do you want to start with?
Well, let's start with the Colts because I actually don't think that one's going to be competitive at all. Now it's come out that Anthony Richardson has his shoulder injury back. Before that shoulder injury, I think Daniel Jones was going to win the job anyways. The way that the coaching staff is talking about it, they want the quarterback that has more consistency. And with Anthony Richardson it's the same shoulder. It's the same shoulder. He might be done. Like this is a serious risk. I think that Anthony Richardson might go down from like a highlight reel perspective as like that 60-yard bomb he had that was an absolute impossible throw that he landed last season, and then cut from that highlight right to him giving up on his season in the critical moment where they're trying to come into a playoff race. I think this guy mentally isn't there. I think Daniel Jones wins that job easily. And last episode, you'll remember, Jake, I said that the Saints were tanking to be able to get Arch Manning. I think the Colts are now firmly in the mix. Like, if you're Arch Manning, you now have 2 very fun marketing opportunities. Either you're the Louisiana boy that's psyched to go and create your new legacy in the Superdome, or you try to build the next Manning legacy in Indianapolis. I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy. He's going to have to be the guy because at least he's a steady hand. Like, keep in mind, Anthony Richardson lost his job to a 39-year-old Joe Flacco. Daniel Jones is not going to be that guy. Anthony Richardson is not bouncing back from, especially with such a critical injury. I think this Colts offense is screwed. I think their season might as well be done. Let's let the tanking rumors fly of New Orleans versus Indianapolis.
Love it. Love it. The Manning Bowl. I will just add, they do have rookie quarterback Riley Leonard. Obviously, there are not big high hopes for him, late round. But again, could he get an opportunity if Jones is as bad as I think a lot of us think he's going to be, assuming, Richardson's toast? And if Daniel Jones doesn't look that good, or if Riley Leonard looks particularly good, he actually might have a shot. So I would say in all of this, I think Riley Leonard has landed himself in a very good position. Getting drafted to the Colts is probably the best thing that could have ever happened to him, don't you think?
I think that's good. That's a great take, actually. I think Daniel Jones got a big enough contract, though, where he was probably going to be the starter regardless. But if we're in the middle of the season, the Colts are absolutely trash. And like they got nothing to learn from giving Daniel Jones more starts. Throw Riley Leonard in there. Let's see what he has. And especially if you're in tank mode, if he sucks, that's better for you. And then get Arch Manning next season.
Oh, it works for
I think
everyone.
that's a great take. Like, it works for everyone. Riley Leonard gets a chance. In that situation, Riley Leonard could have gone his whole career without getting an NFL start just based on the setup. He'd be thrilled even in that situation too. I think it's a great take.
So let's jump from one Arch Manning lottery ticket to another with the New Orleans Saints. They have a very, very interesting QB room. And I think I'm fair to say that their QB room looks absolutely awful, right?
Yeah, I think like Easton Stick would win in that QB room. Like, go get someone's third string quarterback. Like, here's what I don't understand. I don't understand why the media is trying to like put it forward like Rattler has a chance. Rattler got benched last season for I don't even remember who.
I don't know, Jake Hayner.
Rattler didn't even yes, and that was even a joke. Like, he led to oh my god, that like the Saints are absolutely a trash
It's a
organization
really
right now.
bad situation. Again, I hope the best for Tyler Shuck, and I think he had a great college career. But to me, he's a perfect example of a guy who actually ended up in a bad situation. I think he's going to an organization on the down, and I think unfortunately he's gonna kind of go down with the ship, and it's gonna hurt his career.
I don't think he showed the talent out of college for him to like. I don't know what situation he should have walked into that would have maximized his talent. I think regardless of which situation he goes to, you probably like he has to make his own luck at this point. He has to put in those reps. He has to make development moves at a pace where he like puts his career in his own hands. He's in a situation where the ball's in his hands and he has to make most of the situation rather than expecting any organization to really bring him to that level.
Yeah, he's not in a super QB comfortable, great system that's going to help him. And if I were a betting man, which I am a betting man, I would not be betting on Tyler Shuck having a good year. I would not bet on the Saints having a good year. I think they're going to have a rough season. I think the Saints fans need to be prepared. And again, we obviously focus heavily on the quarterback position. It's not to say that there's no talent on the Saints. I just don't think they have it built around for a young quarterback to truly succeed. And I'm not sure that the Saints are really trying to succeed for this season. Although a team will never admit it, I don't think that they're going in that right direction. We got 2 teams left to cover, and these are the big, exciting battles. Let's start with New York. Well, they actually play in New Jersey, but the New York Giants, they got an exciting battle brewing, don't they?
Well, I hate to break it to you, Jake, but they're also not really Giants. So the whole name is kind of a lie. The New York Giants, it's an interesting battle. Obviously, Russell Wilson is probably the starter on day one. But the New York Giants, because of that division, it's also a super competitive division. I was seeing the stats there. They have the hardest schedule in the NFL. Like, they could very easily start 0-5. And if that's the case, and you're Dable and your job is on the line, I think that's probably the point where they switch over from Russell Wilson over to Jackson Dart, because now he has to compete for his job. The general manager has to compete for his job, and they're not going to let that go without showing what their first round quarterback can do. And I sent you that reel the other day, Jake, of Jackson Dart slinging balls alongside Cam Ward. Jackson Dart has an arm. I want to see what he can do with Malik Neighbors. I want to see that offense with like that power running game that they're now elevating in the backfield and see them go for all their glory. I think it's going to be a rough season for the Giants just by way of their schedule. But if Jackson Dart comes in and shows that he's that phenomenal talent that both you and I hope he's going to become, we might see a very exciting team come the second half of the season.
Yeah, I don't want to see them rush Dart in. Being that they're this huge market, I just don't want to see them make a decision too quickly. Let Russell Wilson run the team for a little while, regardless of if it works or not, and go to Dart a little later in the season and let him flourish. Let him flourish when the competition is a little lower, the pressure is a little lower. I think that's going to be a lot easier for him to succeed in a very, very difficult market.
Also, side note on that quarterback room, I'm very sad that we're not going to get any drives from Jameis Winston this season. And I actually think that there should be a rule in the NFL. Like, I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but now I've flushed it out, where I think every team should have 2 quarterbacks. Okay. You get your quarterback 1 and you get your quarterback 2. And then after that, I think every NFL team should be able to tap in to who the next best available quarterback is. And then Jameis Winston gets to play on a team. Like, he could be easily starting for the Saints right now, no questions asked, right? And that would be a really good callback to when he played in New Orleans during the Sean Payton days. Jameis Winston is significantly more valuable doing hilarious things on the field than just as a potential mic'd up guy on the New York Giants bench. And I think if the quarterback position is this important, we need to set up a utility system where, sure, teams can compete with their quarterback 1 and quarterback 2, but we need to find a way to get some of these elite QB3s some playing time.
Not to mention jersey sales. No one doesn't love Jameis Winston. That guy sells jerseys. So,
yeah. Did you see him in the Super Bowl, as a color? He's amazing. He's a bona fide talent. His mouth is better than his arm.
Totally. He doesn't throw any picks with his mouth, right?
I mean, sometimes he does. I don't know what level of trouble he might be getting in for some of the things he's saying, but, he might be.
So we got our last QB room. We've been waiting this whole episode to discuss the Cleveland Browns, our favorite QB room to talk about right now, because there's a lot going on. You got Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. You got some big names there to talk about. There's a lot going on there. It's interesting because I don't think anyone really knows who the front runner is. Like, watching it, from what I've heard, is Shedeur's looked really great. Joe Flacco looks decent, but isn't really taking up the young guys and not trying to help them. And then, of course, you have Pickett in the mix. You got Dylan Gabriel, who's not really getting a lot of love, but he was drafted before Shedeur Sanders. So it's a very interesting room on a very interesting organization.
Yeah. The media is really blowing this one up, and rightfully so. Like, when you get that level of buzz from NFL draft day, this is going to happen. Now, the media reports that I've been seeing are like, Shedeur's the clear front runner. Where are they getting this from? Like, from what I'm seeing, you've got a training camp situation where Flacco, Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel are getting reps with the first stringers, and Shedeur Sanders is getting reps with future plumbers. I don't know how you're getting the reports out here where, like, Shedeur Sanders, like, it's great. It's easy for Shedeur Sanders to look good. Look what competition he's playing against in his training camp drills. I think the only people that think that Shedeur Sanders is deserving of the QB1 spot over the other talent is the media, just because they are incentivized from the clicks and from the attention they're getting to be able to try to make him the quarterback 1. But from a pure, hey, who's actually NFL ready? I do think we're probably looking at one of Flacco or Pickett. It does seem like Pickett is gaining some ground on Flacco, but Flacco is probably the better bet considering he's already comfortable in their system and he's already, he's as seasoned as it gets at this point. Week 1 is probably Joe Flacco. There might be some Kenny Pickett as we go into the season. I'd be surprised if we do get quarterback plays from the rookies, but the other piece there, too, is like, let's say you're the Cleveland Browns and you have a terrible start in terms of your record. You don't have anything really to learn from putting Joe Flacco and Pickett on the field. Maybe get some rookie reps in there, see what they're made of, get some things under their training wheels. And then at least if you let's say Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders go, there's something on film to explain why you're letting them go. I don't necessarily know why you would just stick with your veterans while you're in the middle of a losing season. There's nothing really to learn from it.
It's a good note. As an organization, I don't think they can really let go Gabriel or Sanders without massive media backlash unless we see them play and see that the talent's not there. I do agree with you. I think Joe Flacco is the guy to start week 1. I think it's a no-brainer. You have nothing to lose. You start him day 1. I don't think Gabriel or Sanders appear to be ready unless we see something incredible in preseason. I think you have to go with Joe Flacco. Give him a shot. If he's doing well enough and the team is rolling, great, keep going. If not, then sure, you give some opportunities to the rookies. But I totally agree. I think the media has blown this up into this huge, exciting thing. And look, even us, we're so excited and we're ready to feast on this QB room. But at the end of the day, we're limited to what the media tells us. And a lot of times that's not necessarily exactly what's actually going on. So I like that you broke that down. Before we go, there's one last piece, and this was sort of the BS I wanted to talk about. Brett Favre. total scumbag. And although he has not been found guilty at this point, he certainly seems to be quite guilty on multiple fronts. On going after someone who looks exactly like your wife, I think that that's strange. I also think it's borderline criminal what he did. He kind of harassed her. And then, of course, you have the whole financial thing. He took all this money from the state and he funneled it and he didn't pay his taxes. And at the end of the day, I think what you need to take from this, and I should be clear, this is that Netflix special, The Untold Stories on Brett Favre. He just seems to be not like what we all thought he was watching him as a great football player. He seems to be this conniving, take advantage of people, selfish person.
Yeah, I think it just shows the level of hero worship towards quarterbacks that happens in the world, where you can kind of do wrong, and that anybody that's willing to blow the whistle on you is so fearful of the consequences to themselves that they make the calculation internally that it's actually better for me to just let this one slide, which is tough because this story doesn't come out. If I don't remember her name, it's completely slipping me, but if she doesn't talk to that one reporter, this story never sees the light of day. But yeah, it's weird to see Brett Favre go from everyone's hero to America's creepiest uncle. And it's a tough one for him. I think it's a tough look. And it just seems like when you have that level of hero worship, it becomes easy for your morals and for the way that you perceive some of these situations to go awry.
Yeah, I want to give credit to Jen Sturger. That's who it is. And look, she came out.
That's the name.
She wasn't shy about it. Good for her. But it's a real shame how this happens sometimes. Yes, we love the quarterback position. We look up to these guys in a lot of ways, and it always stings when they don't end up being that person we thought. And at the end of the day, I think we need to remember that they're a football player, but they can be just like anyone else, and they can make mistakes and do things that are pretty bad. And unfortunately, in this case, Favre got away with a lot of things that he should not have gotten away with.
And shout out to Netflix, because this one was way better than the Aaron Rodgers one. Shout out to getting us some quality quarterback content.
Something good, something new, something that we didn't know about. But again, another Green Bay Packers quarterback that was great on the field, but not a great guy outside of the field and outside of the game.
Well, given how much Aaron Rodgers follows Brett Favre's career, starting in Green Bay, having a disappointing stint with the New York Jets, do we think that there might be a woman's phone somewhere that has pictures of his unspeakable region? Do you think there's something waiting in the wings where Aaron Rodgers has taken Brett Favre's roadmap even to that extent?
I definitely think the media needs to start digging, and I'm sure they are. As soon as this story came out about Favre, and now that it's, on Netflix for the world to see, you better believe reporters are going to look into what's going on with Rodgers and if there's been any funny business there.
Yeah, I think they need to look into that. I think they need to look into whether or not Aaron Rodgers has received misappropriated welfare funds. I think all of it's on the table, and none of it would surprise me.
Don't stop digging.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us again. Again, if you've listened to this entire episode, I hope you better subscribe to this channel. Thanks again.
Yeah, if you've made it this far and you don't hit that button, what are you doing?
Come on now. We need the support. Love you all.